I'd love to hear a bit about the mission of the Choraliers, Uzee Brown side of Choraliers that you direct, and what your hopes and dreams for that group continue to be, and the mission that that you're working on together.
Well, that group was organized because we were asked to perform a composition that was based upon the writings of Philip Makowitz, who was a survivor, one of the last of the survivors of the terrible prison camps in Germany. And he was only a small child, but he had scribbled things down with, I think, some charred bark, the carbon from the bark that he had retained all those years, and the scraps that he'd kept in his pockets. And he was such a fascinating man to meet. But one of my former teachers from the University of Michigan, Burton Bierman, wrote a composition entitled Tikva, which means hope. And it was a multi-sectional piece. It would be what one would call a mixed media composition, because it had film, it had an instrumental ensemble, and a variety of things, and it also had a chorus. And he asked me if I would prepare the chorus for that. And one of the reasons is because the parallel of the dilemma of the Jewish people in the Holocaust was not unlike the dilemma of the African American, and not only the slave, but the South African situation and so forth. And what happens in the videography of this thing is that it moves through various films that are by way connected to body sync, so the dancer moves to the images and the colors on the film. Really creative piece. But there are these parallels of scenes of oppression. You would have one that from the Holocaust, another from the burnings in South Africa, another from the antebellum days of slavery, and so forth, and looking at oppression wherever it may be. One of the pieces we sang was that, why is it that man treats his fellow man who is weaker so bad? That's just simply, that's the message. What is it about human nature that seems to give us the prerogative, or to assume prerogative, to take advantage of someone who is weaker? And it was the result of that recording project that we came together. These were former members of my choirs from the several places where I did church work, Ben Hill United Methodist Church, Cascade, Ebenezer for almost 13 years. And we were all excited to come together. And part of that mission was just the joy of coming together and singing, but to do something that elevated an awareness of music that was not as often heard in our communities as should be. And there was certainly room for that.
So it strikes me there's a prophetic side to that kind of music making, and a healing side to that. I mean, these two powerful, the piece that you describe, how hauntingly compelling that is. That's that's not just arts as decorative, it's arts with a powerful cultural.
Precisely. I say that always, and that's a word that I use, and I used early, functional music. Because functional music is an expression of life. It is not something that is an intellectual opining, something that one does simply as an exercise to flex his intellectual muscles and to sit and perhaps wander off in leisure time into, it's all right, into Elysian fields, and okay. But in reality, music is a reflection of life, and I tell my students always, be careful that you do not use an aesthetic definition for music. It's not something that's pleasant or beautiful, pleasing to the ear. It can be provocative, it can be violent, it can be all of these things that are part of the human experience and our emotions. And it is the intention to capture that brings life to it, because the performer is really a recreator. And if the composer does not create something that becomes this instrument through which the performer is able to recreate and then deliver to a listening audience, something in that has not been successful.